Holy microwave meatballs! It's me again. Today, I'm talking about movies. About my favorite movies for that matter, and to be more specific, about my favorite movies of the last year, 2012. I didn't have a single film theater disappointment in 2012, which is spectacular, actually. Might actually be the very first year that I didn't have a single film theater disappointment. I don't really know what to say any further, so let me just get right down to the list itself. Number 10, Rise of the Guardians. Now, I'm a huge sucker for CGI animated feature films, and I always have been a huge sucker for CGI animated feature films. Which is why nowadays I can be really critical of those films. I had zero expectations from that film. I expected it to be another mediocre, super cheesy fairy tale for the youngest, but it actually blew me away. I didn't even want to watch it. Like, I had no actual intentions to ever watch that film. But, you know, one night, I'm bored, I got nothing specific on mind, nothing specific to do or watch. And then Rise of Guardians comes along my way, and so I watch it, and oh my god, it's good. It's really good. It's unique. Sure, there is one huge-ass cliche in the film, a cliche that I'm quite tired of, but I guess it's just mandatory. But setting that aside, Rise of the Guardians is just awesome. It's incredibly funny when it intends to be funny. It's really thrilling, actually. The action, oh my god. The action could easily be one of the best actions I've ever seen in a CGI animated feature film. Honestly. The characters are all just awesome. I mean, one of the main characters is possibly the coolest version of Santa Claus I've ever seen. I mean, he's a freaking swords-wielding Russian badass. I mean, that's just genius.
Oh, good. That was my idea.
And the villain is awesome, and the music is awesome, and it's just awesome. Awesome.
Here we go!
Number 9, Ruby Sparks. Again, a film that I had no expectations whatsoever with, because I didn't even know the film existed until I actually stumbled upon it. And boy am I glad I stumbled upon it. Frankly, ever since Cashback, I really didn't think I'd ever see another original romantic comedy. And then Ruby Sparks comes along, and I just freaking loved it. The concept is genius. A young author, a loner, a considerable loner anyway, writes a fictional character, and the character comes to life. And it's a beautiful, adorable woman. By the way, Zoe Kazan, my new crush, thank you very much. And it's just really smart, again, really funny when it intends to be funny, really sweet in those sweet scenes. It has one of the most intense, best soundtracks that I've heard all year. And there's this one particular scene near the end of the movie, which truly put the film on this list. It's not really much of a spoiler when I say that the in-movie fictional character, the main character realizes or learns that she's actually a created character that he has written. And the scene where she discovers this, honestly, that scene was genius. I actually almost cried during that scene, not because it was sad or so touchingly beautiful, but because it was just written so well, and composed so well, and cut so well, and shot so well, and the music that played in the background during that scene. I mean, the scene, it makes me cry the tears of joy whenever I see a scene so good. And that scene honestly really earned my tears of joy.
That was insane!
Number 8. The Cabin in the Woods. This movie is so freaking underrated. I guess I partially understand. It's a horror movie. Specifically, it's a horror comedy. Even more specifically, it's a comedy making fun of common horror flicks, horror cliches. And it does that so freaking well. It does that so well. I honestly was laughing out loud. It's a really funny comedy, but it's not at all a bad horror movie in its own right. It actually was downright scary at certain points. And, there's this... From the beginning, there's something weird going on, obviously, and then the plot twist takes place where it's all explained. And I think this is really where the film divides its audience into the two camps. The camp that loves the movie and the twist, therefore, and the camp that hates it. I'm thankfully in the love camp because I honestly thought that was brilliant. I thought the idea was brilliant. I thought they couldn't have made up a better explanation for all the shit that goes down in the third act. And honestly, the ending itself, I think I had a little geek orgasm at the very end of the film. A well-earned 8th spot on this list. Number 7, Ted. Again, a movie I did not expect to enjoy as much as I did, but yeah, once again, and I am happy to say so, Ted is incredibly funny. Ted is incredibly funny comedy. It does it all right. It makes you laugh. It makes you actually laugh in the first 5 minutes, and then it gives you a good laugh pretty much every 5th scene. But it's not all jokes, obviously, because, you would get tired of that eventually. No. It also has the sentiment. It also has the mandatory part where the pace slows down and the humor steps aside to make room for a little drama, which thankfully still is, in fact, hilarious in its own way. And let's not forget the alpaca joke. Oh my god, I have seen or heard that joke before seeing Ted, but only in Ted it was really effective because of what the joke was aimed at in regards to the film itself. And oh my god, Flash Gordon, a large part of the film circulates around Flash Gordon, and they got the actual actor who played Flash Gordon, Sam Jane Jones, and oh my god, and when I saw the fact that he can effectively make fun of himself and laugh at himself, I almost cried again. I almost cried tears of joy and sheer happiness because of just the film simply really cheered me up. It made me laugh like crazy and it cheered me up. Number 6, Indie Game, the movie. Now, I guess it's not completely fair to put a documentary on this list. Maybe some of you may consider it not fair, but honestly, parts of this documentary were more thrilling than Social Network, for crying out loud. Actually thrilling, because in the documentary you watch 3 game developers, one more than the other 2, as they struggled with their games, with their hit games. And yes, as a gamer, I just couldn't not include this because it's just such a well-made documentary. It's the only documentary that I watched twice and were equally entertained both times. It's a documentary specifically aimed at independent video games, which makes it all the more awesome. And it's about free video games, two of which I really love. It's about Fez, Super Meat Boy, and Braid. Now, I haven't played Fez yet, but I have played Braid and Super Meat Boy, and both of those are awesome. And apparently Braid was, and I didn't know this until I saw this documentary, but apparently Braid was made by one guy, and Super Meat Boy by two guys. That is absolutely phenomenal. In its own right, that's phenomenal. The movie taught me something phenomenal, and it's just phenomenally made, if I'm honest. And I loved it, and I truly cannot recommend this film enough to anyone who's at least a casual gamer, anyone who maybe underestimates the indie scene, or really loves the scene. I mean, it works both ways. And you don't even have to be a gamer to really enjoy this documentary. The second time I watched this, I watched it with a friend of mine who basically just got into gaming by that point. She basically only played one video game at that point, and she absolutely loved it. She absolutely lost her breath watching that. So yes, Indie Game the Movie is some powerful stuff.
What the f is that?
Number 5, Skyfall. Yes, I actually loved Skyfall, and yes, I think it's the single best Bond movie since Tomorrow Never Dies. Yeah. And that's even despite the fact that I still don't really like Daniel Craig as James Bond. I really didn't like him in Casino Royale as James Bond, even though Casino Royale itself is a really good Bond movie, if you ask me. And, Daniel is not a bad actor by any means. He doesn't play the part in a vile manner or anything like that. He does a good job, all things considered. I just don't like him in that role, that's it. I guess in Skyfall I didn't really even notice him being really not fitting for the role in my sort of dream world, because Skyfall itself is just so much different of a James Bond movie than anything I've seen so far. And it's actually really, really good, really effective, and it has only the second greatest villain of 2012. The first one is yet to come on this list, but yeah. Again, it's definitely not a flawless movie. It's not a flawless Bond movie by any means, but it's just powerful stuff. Number 4, The Hobbit, An Unexpected Journey. Now, I'm about to say something that might outrage people in the world, but The Hobbit is not only one of the best fantasy films ever made, in my opinion, but it's also incomparably better than the entire Lord of the Rings trilogy. Now, I know the Lord of the Rings trilogy, or the first film, was kind of groundbreaking. It was kind of revolutionary. It kind of changed a lot of things, and in a lot of ways on how films are made and all that good stuff. But frankly, I liked those movies. I liked the Lord of the Rings trilogy, but they were nothing really spectacular for a casual viewer like myself. The Hobbit, on the other hand, being 3 hours long, I was super afraid of this. I was super terrified of this. I expected to be bored beyond myself. I expected to hate it, because I really expected it to be basically all that was bad about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But no, in fact, it's all the good. And it does not have the things that I disliked about the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I mean, first of all, it's much less serious. It's much more lighthearted. It's basically a fairy tale, whereas the Lord of the Rings trilogy is like your mature fantasy. I loved the fact that it wasn't that serious. I'm a huge Martin Freeman fan, and he's definitely a much more interesting Hobbit than Elijah Wood was, right? And all the other Hobbits that they had in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I thought the pacing was perfect. I thought every scene had its place in the movie. I didn't feel it was too long at all. I loved it. I absolutely, despite all odds, loved it. And this was the biggest surprise of the year for me, for obvious reasons.
No.
Number 3, Cloud Atlas. I expected great things, I received great things. Honestly, I think the film is kind of overrated in one aspect. And that aspect is, I think people make it out to be way deeper and way more confusing and complicated and complex than it really is. I really don't think the film was confusing at all. And I really don't think it was all that deep and all that ambitious as it tries to advertise itself. Having said that, however, I did love it to bits. I absolutely loved how they used the same characters and gave them different masks in the different lifelines. I love the story. I absolutely adored the story. I do adore the idea and the concept of first writing a book and then making a film about how your actions in one life affect your future lives. That's pretty crazy, I guess. But yeah, I love that. And I loved how they worked with that in the film. Number 2, The Avengers. Kind of predictable of me, perhaps, but yes, I absolutely had to mention The Avengers. And, you know, before seeing the next movie, the actual number 1 movie, The Avengers were obviously the best movie that I saw that year, and I expected them to remain the number 1 very best film that I would see all year. But anyway, they are awesome. They are just awesome. Again, they have it all. They have quality humor, they have fantastic action, they have amazing pacing, like actually amazing pacing. I mean, the film is 2.5 hours long, and I felt it was only 1 hour and a half. How do you do that? That's fucking magic, dude. Again, it's not flawless. It's actually, in many moments and in many aspects, it's just plain dumb. But I expected it to be dumb. I expected to have tons of some crazy stupid fun, which I did. And I loved it so very much. I can't even... Oh my god. Oh yes, and I think I don't even have to mention this, as it's been already, I think, declared the general truth. But Mark Ruffalo as Hulk is the freaking perfect casting choice. He is the best Hulk ever, and he better stay the Hulk from now on, forever, until he dies, because he truly is amazing. And him being so amazing as Hulk actually was another big surprise, because I kind of expecting him to stink as Hulk, but no, he totally kills it as Hulk. He kind of actually steals the show on more than one occasion in the film. I don't want to spoil anything, in case somebody actually hasn't seen the film yet, in which case you should feel pretty damn bad about yourself. And finally, number 1, Django Unchained. Now, this being a Quentin Tarantino film, I did expect to love it to bits because I'm a huge Tarantino fan. I can't even begin to describe how big of a fan I am of his work. But I didn't expect to love it this much because, as I said, I expected The Avengers to remain the best film that I would see all year. But Django actually managed to surpass my already ceiling-high expectations. I mean, this is effectively my second favorite Tarantino film now, right after Pulp Fiction. I think they actually haven't invented a word that would effectively and properly describe just how much I loved this film. It's almost 3 hours long. I wish it was 4 hours at least. I wanted more. I still want more. It's just crazy. And yes, referring back to what I said previously, Django Unchained has the best villain of 2012, played by Leonardo DiCaprio. The role of his life, if you ask me. His performance was actually quite breathtaking. I did not expect him to be that good in the role. Overall, the movie is kind of stolen by Christoph Waltz again, which I did expect. I expected no little things from him after Inglourious Basterds, of course. But Leonardo DiCaprio, I mean, I think he should play more villains from now on, because after seeing this one film, I do think that the bad guy is kind of more his league, because he really killed it as the villain of the film. And that's saying a lot, because he actually shows up only like halfway through the film. Much like the villain in Skyfall, now that I think about it. Once again, it's just so well written. It's just so well shot. The soundtrack is once again freaking perfect, and I was actually quite blown away when I learned that Quentin got the great Ennio Morricone to compose for this film. But once I learned that, I knew that the soundtrack would be just mind-blowingly good. And it was. And Samuel L. Jackson, oh my god, Samuel L. Jackson, holy crap. I mean, his cartoonish take on this obsessive, dominant head servant, I don't really know what the brains were called. I actually thought that was one of the best performances of his career. Also, I think some people still call this movie a racist one. Are you fucking out of your minds? That's like saying Brokeback Mountain was homophobic.
Anyone bring any extra bags?
No, nobody brought an extra bag.
Okay, that was my top 10 best films of 2012. Let me actually include some honorable mentions, because I have seen a lot of great movies in 2012, and I feel kind of obliged to at least honorably mention those that did not make it to the list. So, here. Those are my honorable mentions. Yes, good. So, yes, okay. Thanks for watching. If you did, let me know if you agree or disagree, or both. And see you later!